Good morning, Matt Waldman. How are you today?
Good morning, Bob Harris. Pretty good, man. I can walk up and down stairs without some crutches one
Ah,
week later. So I'm maybe 5 or 6 days out before I can take the box safety back out to the park.
the irony of the crutches being manufactured by a company of the same name as the perpetrator of your injury is remarkable.
Yeah, I love the smack talk. I mean, my wife and I engage in a lot of smack talk, so it's only fitting that the dog would get into it in the family.
Yeah, so I'm feeling great today, by the way. Slightly better than
Yeah,
probably Dan Campbell.
yeah, probably so. But overall, we should still be feeling great about Dan Campbell, don't you? But it seems like a contentious thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's interesting that the thing we're complaining the most about is the thing that probably was as much responsible for them getting where they are. Like, right? Like, so we're talking about, in case you missed this game somehow, Dan Campbell aggressively going for it on fourth downs and maybe questionable circumstances or not, right? Like this has been his modus operandi all season long. The him being true to that and it going wrong, it's basically a 50-50 proposition, right? And
Yeah.
like I mean, there are things I would question more than I would question those decisions or essentially the last one where he elected not to kick a field goal and go for the touchdown. I mean, yes, I would have done, and I can go back to the Dallas game, and I feel like he cost them that game. He cut off his nose to spite his face when his wonky tackle eligible play.
Yep.
That honestly, I know the sentiment is, oh well, we told them in advance. Well, if you listen to Dean Blandino, who the former head of officiating, who had a really good, take on this, was like, if he told that to the referee would have told him, no, you're not doing that. You have one guy report in. The whole idea of somebody reporting in is so the other team knows what's going on. Obfuscating that with some chicanery is not like really acceptable. So whatever, his decision to twice can go for that, two-parter twice after that, I thought was, just total hubris, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll show them. This felt less like that, but a little like that. And I guess that's what people are going to focus on. But in general, that's been his approach to everything, right? And if you go out and kind of look at the analytics, it wasn't a bad decision. It wasn't a great outcome.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna nail him too hard for that. He's turned this franchise around. It wasn't him that had a interception bounce off his face. It
Drop
wasn't him.
passes.
Right, drop passes. Josh Reynolds, you were my guy. What happened, man? Um, but but also, like if I was going to complain about a play call, it would be that run at the end, right? It would be the run with a minute left, at the near the goal line when two passes might have been, the wiser choice of course of action. So you wouldn't have to burn the timeout, and so yeah, that's my complaint there. Beyond that, I think looking at this team, I mean, you think about a team that's set up for future success. I mean, I think Jared Goff has established himself as more than serviceable. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say more than serviceable, at least serviceable, right? You've got a dynamic running back duo that gives you all the pieces, everything fits together and works out really well with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, who, by the way, some of us were really in on him from the get-go, but it's a whole nother story. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Look, Jameson Williams showed up. How many people are going to overdraft Jameson Williams based on this game? The Gabe Davis factor will be in effect, people. Be careful of it. I mean, I'm optimistic for him, but don't draft him based on this game. Sam Laporta, one of the best young tight ends, if not the best young tight end in the game. So there's a lot to hang their hat on. And some of the rookies on the defensive side, Aiden Hutchinson,
Brian Branch.
Ryan Branch, huge factor. Linebacker Jack Campbell will be an increasing factor over time. You could argue that maybe those weren't great, huge needs. Maybe they had other needs or there were better players available at those points in the draft. I mean, some would argue that about Jahmyr Gibbs, and I say, fuck those people.
I'd say fuck those people about Brian Branch. If you haven't watched Brian Branch this year, you've missed out. He's arguably defensive rookie of the year.
I haven't heard much consternation about Branch, that's for sure. But even Gibbs, I mean, his performance was fantastic. You could argue they had other needs, like maybe cornerback, for one, right? So So I get it, but also I get Jahmyr Gibbs. He's my guy. Uh, but they're in a good position, I think, going forward. The big question mark here is going to be, will somebody do them a favor of hiring away Aaron Glenn, or do them the disservice of hiring Ben Johnson? The latter seems way more likely to me at the moment. The Commanders seem to be heading towards hiring Johnson, the offensive coordinator. That seems to have been baked into the cake early on when they hired Adam Peters as their GM away from San Francisco. I don't know if that's 100% going to be the case. There are two openings. I'm guessing Ben Johnson will get one. And McDonald, the Mike McDonald, the Baltimore defensive coordinator, seems like he's a rising piece of that puzzle as well. So he may get the other, but we'll see. San Francisco side of the ball, Matt, I thought like Brock Purdy, I was watching you Twitter during the first half. I saw the hatred for Brock Purdy. I made a comment last night in the chat. Brock Purdy is demonstrating he got a little of that dog in him on that first long run in the fourth quarter. I mean, put his head down, made the plays when it was necessary. The things about, whatever your complaints are about Brock Purdy, the things that remedy whatever those complaints are the things around him, starting with Christian McCaffrey, who had 130-plus yards from scrimmage against a super tough run defense, but it doesn't matter what the defense does. Christian McCaffrey's going to get his. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk making a phenomenal play on the aforementioned bounce off a face mask. George Kittle making some big plays. And like their defense can play, the evidence notwithstanding in the first half, I think, So I think San Francisco is in a really good spot and in a really good spot for fantasy managers going forward. I know the discussions about Brock Purdy, the questions are going to continue about Brock Purdy if they don't win the Super Bowl. We will start hearing the rumors that they were looking at Tom Brady or that they, look, they have a history of being a little skittish at quarterback. They were more than willing to move away from Trey Lance despite a ton of draft capital invested. I'm sure if they felt like it was the move to make that 262nd pick they invested in Brock Purdy is like nothing to them. So sure, but I think Purdy is doing everything. We've talked about him at length, Matt, over the course of the year for this reason, right? There are always going to be doubters about his ability. I thought he did a fine job. Was it perfect? No. But he has a great supporting cast, and they also have a great defense, except for Chase Young.
Yeah, his skills are subtle, and it's the subtle skills that matter. It's not the things that are most obvious that you hear about quarterback play that gets everyone all excited, and then those guys bust. Arm strength, big size, big school, big stats. Interviewed well at the combine, whatever it is that the mainstream media reports about those guys. So the fact that they can't see it is why they complain about it, and when they see the broad overarching things where you have the ebbs and flows of the game, if it's not perfect with him, then he's no good. So that's all fine.
Any other takeaways you have from that game?
Well, for me, I want to go back to Detroit, and you just mentioned, the most important thing is that offensive line. And with Dan Campbell, that offensive line is great. And I'm not so worried about coordinators. We overrate coordinators. It's players that actually make the difference more often than not. Now, if the coordinators screw up the game plan enough where they're not leveraging the player's strengths and they're completely, they take a player who's better at spread concept football and now you're going to put him under center, then yes, that's a bad decision. But in terms of what plays to call and all of that, it's a bit overrated until we get into the minutia of the championship game. And let's consider this with Dan Campbell. I don't know. The guy is a ballsy coach. He came in there basically, with that intention in mind, and he's lived up to that. And you're going to be aggressive and take chances, and you're going to believe, and it's showing belief in your team. And is he going to make mistakes along the way, just like his quarterback or just like a cornerback or any player in a big game situation? Absolutely. But to me, the idea that because he's going to lose his coordinators, now, this was a one and done for Detroit. That to me, that it's going to. There are a lot of factors that may go into why they don't get back to this point next year, because it's hard to do. But one thing that is clear. I want that guy as my coach. No, there's not another coach in the league I would rather have for my team, because he's a manager of his team, and he will manage the people who need to put them in the right places and to oversee things on a certain level. Did he make those play calls? I doubt it. Is he going to take responsibility for those play calls? Absolutely. And he's strong enough to deal with what's going on right now in the aftermath. I'm a huge fan, and nothing about what he did changed my mind about that.
Totally agree. Two points on that. Number one, I always stand for fellow Metallica fans. Two, I think, you mentioned, will he learn from those mistakes? I don't know that he will, and I don't know that I expect him to, right? I think those are not necessarily mistakes in his mind. They just were not the great outcomes.
No,
and
I just mean like certain specific plays,
right.
not not some of the ones that people are blaming.
Yeah, I think out of the coordinator too, you make a good point. Like I'd be more concerned if Bobby Slowick was moving on from Houston, where you've got a defensive coach and you have a young quarterback that had a unexpected development and an offense that was wildly more productive than probably any of us believed. I think that would be a more concern for me than in Detroit, where you have those established players. And I think that's more of a top-down situation, as you suggested. So I'm with you there. All right.
Yeah.
What did we see in Baltimore that raises our eyebrows?
I mean, again, let's remember, this is Lamar Jackson's first year in this offense. I think he said it perfectly. He's the type of guy that when he says something, he means it.
Yes.
He's not a bullshitter like a lot of people who play the game, because Lamar Jackson, I'll just lay it out. Lamar Jackson, as a black man playing quarterback who wasn't given really much of the same I would say opportunities in certain ways. Like, he's gotten the opportunities to compete and play, but without the level of criticism and obstacles in his way at every turn. Everything he said he's going to do, he's pretty much done up to this point in terms of, performing. And so he's a straightforward guy, because the system where we play the game doesn't work for him. It doesn't work for him. It only works for some people. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. That's how it's been. And he's not one of those people that it works for. So he's gone his own way, and it's worked. So I like when he stands up there at he doesn't dress up before the game to win points, because if he dresses up, then people are going to make fun of like how he looks and how flashy he is, or what he did. They're going to critique him more. That's just normally how that shit goes. He could dress up like Tom Brady and they would probably say he's phony. So he comes in, tries to do the job, and at the end of the press conference this week, he was angry with himself, and he defended his teammates, and he talked about how this is our first year in the offense. We had a good year for the first year in our offense. Obviously, I thought we could get farther. I'm angry with myself. There are things we can do better, but I'm optimistic about where that can go. And I'm absolutely 100% convinced about that, because your only receiver of worth, not your tight end, your only receiver of worth was Zay Flowers, of like real, like every down worth. And he's a rookie. And you don't think you're going to make better adjustments with him now that he's not having to learn the offense? Now you can just spot the nuances of looking back at the game tape and going, here's where we should have adjusted. Here's where we should adjust in the future in these situations. Here's how defenses are going to play us now that we've had 8 weeks of football to scout and go, oh, this is what they figured out about us. Here's how we counter that. We're going to have 3 or 4 contingencies in the book that we needed 8 weeks of football to probably see. And now we got a whole off season to prepare for that? You don't think they're going to get better with that? Rashad Bateman always hurt. Odell Beckham, we knew he was always going to be a part-time player. And Isaiah Likely, as good of a story as he is, he ain't Mark Andrews. And Mark Andrews was hurt for most of the year. So, right. And you lost arguably your best offensive skill player after those two, Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins, who easily could have been your best offensive skill player based on the talent that he had.
And based on how that offense is ran out over the season. I mean, run-heavy offense.
They're they were doing makeshift running back all year. Let's just be honest about that. So really, to get to this game with what that all that is, Ravens fans, once they get past the sting of this, should be really happy about the direction of their team. And I just think that I just think that the future is very bright. And while you just have to understand the difference between those two teams. The Chiefs have continuity. Even losing Tyreek Hill, they have continuity of coaching staff, system, quarterback, key elite skill player. And even through all the ups and downs, remember the Patriots for all those years. Every midseason, oh, the Patriots are over. Oh, their offense is bad. Oh, this guy's missing. They're going to really miss him. Oh, this guy's hurt. That's really going to happen. Tom Brady's struggling, and they win another Super Bowl. This is kind of where the Chiefs are right now.
Yeah, I think that, for me, everything you said about Baltimore is 100% true. All right. Like, I have questions in this game, maybe, a more concerted effort to run. I mean, how many carries did we have between Justice Hill and Gus Edwards? It was minimal. I thought there should have been, more of an effort. And it's not like, Kansas City was, going great guns in the second half. The Ravens played fine defense in the second half. Houston didn't score any points. So, like, I thought this game was, in question until the Flowers fumble at the goal line. And so, I mean, like, I don't know. I hear the complainers. The Chiefs, to me, look like they can play some defense. They look like they can play some offense. They've got just enough pieces, like between Pacheco, Kelsey, and Rashee Rice, and whoever else shows up in the moment.
Yeah. Because
clearly they can, including Marquez Valdez-Scantling. It's not the norm. I got you, but I mean, I think they have enough to probably play with anyone. That said, I'm not excited about their chances against the Niners, but we'll see how that plays out. I just think for, right now, like looking at some of the values for some of these players as we head into next season, Lamar Jackson's going to be, if he's not quarterback 2, he's quarterback 3. He'll supplant Mahomes at the top of the ranks. And the only question is, does he move ahead of Jalen Hurts? Maybe not, now that they've hired a big name offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore. What, right or wrong, I mean, people are going to have feelings about that without seeing any evidence of outcomes or possible outcomes. So I think, that's to me, Lamar Jackson, I'm going to be mad that I'm not getting value on him next year, because you're not.
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes, you are. Patrick Mahomes is going to be a value going quarterback. I mean, it's not like he's going to fall out of the top 5. Probably, not far beyond 4. It's where you're getting him as opposed to where you've gotten him in the past, which is the second or third round. If I'm seeing him later and there's a hole in my draft where, oh, there he is, and I don't like anyone else, I'll have a fair amount of Mahomes there. Travis Kelce is going to be a value next year. Meaning he's not going in the first round. And meaning that a lot of people are going to take Sam Laporta ahead of him. Also, I would remind those people, Travis Kelce was not bad this year. He just wasn't Kelcean. He was still tight end 1. So, and this game demonstrated what he is still capable of. If you thought for some reason his skill set has diminished, I would advise you to rewatch yesterday's game. He'll be fine. And same with Rashee Rice. I'm really eager to see. And if they add a piece around, whether it's one of those top free agents, which to me seems like unlikely. If it's one of the top, I mean, the top 3 are pretty clear cut to me: T. Higgins, Mike Evans, and Michael Pittman Jr. And I think the only one that probably is, I don't know if any of them are in play, right? Michael Pittman Jr. is the only one I haven't heard. I've heard talk that the Bengals will franchise T. Higgins. That has not stopped other teams from talking about him. I'm sure Brian Callahan has some thoughts on this as he moves to Tennessee from Cincinnati. So we'll see, but them adding another, here's the funny thing. Brett Veach seems to be really good at drafting everything but wide receivers. And Rashee Rice is like the notable exception. And so, there's hope there as well. But beyond that, Brett Veach has a super strong history, especially with running backs. He attempts to find them for free and turn them into things. So, also Patrick Mahomes.
He has another one sitting on the bench, deep in the bowels of that bench that the Cardinals got rid of in Keontae Ingram, who made people go, oh, whatever. don't be surprised if he actually has a role next year. If
That's kind of how it
there's
works there.
Yeah, that is back from Spencer Ware and Carell Buckhalter, way back
Right.
in the days. But yeah, I mean, I love what you had to say about those guys, and it makes sense. And when you look at the defensive side of the ball, L'Jarius Sneed is a good cornerback. You
Yep.
have Nick Bolton, who is an excellent middle linebacker who can cover the run and blitz. And of course, Chris Jones. I mean, Chris Jones can turn it on at the end of games and be dominant at times.
Saw that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Listen, I mean, I would say most of my IDP rosters have a combination of Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and I have at least three of those four, if not all four of those four, on almost every roster that I play in.
Because I think that's very important to have some of those Chiefs too. I mean, like, that's a good defense. I did want to get your Taylor Swift take.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Like, it's, I mean, good for her. It's all fine. I have a friend who's, I laugh because I think, is she like, is the whole take against her, is it because of her politics and more about social issues? Is it that she's like,
I think
she has
I
a
think
pro-gay stance, and
I think it's just that she's there and getting attention. And
okay,
I would suggest to those people, if that's your only issue, if you had a life partner who was supportive of you and showed up at events for you, you would kind of expect that, right? And I'm sure Travis Kelce might expect the same. The fact is that not all of them are billionaires,
and
musical superstars.
Yeah, and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift aren't going to put the cameras on me.
No,
they get enough of that. They would probably very much like that not to be the case.
If you saw the game last night, I believe there was a point where she said, "Please go away" when the camera was on her. So
yeah, but this is the NFL producers. Thank the NFL the producers of CBS and NBC and ESPN and any place where this game's going to be broadcast. You don't think they're going to say we need to put cameras on her all the time because we're getting more and more ratings.
Right. And like, shocking development. I saw a one of the news sites last night where the post-game celebration with Kelce and Taylor Swift kissing was above the story about the game outcome.
Of course, because it's like, I mean, that's how that works. I mean, I don't really care. Will the NFL leverage that if they can? I think so.
Yes.
Why wouldn't they?
We've seen it.
They have the military pay for their patriotic displays, and they have the public pay for their stadiums. If you don't know your league that you love, even if you don't really love it unconditionally, because or at least you don't love it in its full realistic light, which is that it's got this side of it too that's not pleasant.
I feel like we both had way better takes on Taylor Swift than most of the takes I've seen. So there we go. Let's leave it at that before we screw it up.
We won't, because I don't even listen to her. Who cares? I mean, like, good for her, whatever,
Yeah, she seems to be an enterprise unto herself, and congratulations on her business acumen and whatever, all the music talent that clearly people love her. So
awesome.
I should probably listen.
Her. Yeah, more power to her.
All right, let's get to something else. I want to ask you, because I get asked a lot, and I have a really simple answer to this. I want to hear your answer, advice for people who want to get into the fantasy football content creation business.
I asked you this question recently off air, so you're going to have the better answer, because I don't want to take your answer and repurpose it for, and go, see, I have this great answer. But I'll add some things to it. I'll say that for some of you, if you get into this career, for few of you who get into this career, your ascension in it may be very fast. For some of you who get in this career, it may take forever. It may take a long time, and it will be a longer slog for you to get to where you want to go, depending on what your goals are. I think you have to be. I think that if you are whether you're single or you are have a spouse or significant other that you're planning to build a life with, I would say they need to have buy-in to what you are planning to do, because most of you are transitioning from one job to hopefully maybe making this an extra source of income, or hoping you can make this, most of you are dreaming that you can make this a full-time thing. Let's be real. I mean, we know that somewhere in your heart of hearts, if you want to do this, a lot of you are hoping for that to happen. You need to make sure that your family's on board with this, and that they understand that the hours are going to be long, that you're going to have to juggle things in a manner where you're going to have to choose things like, well, I got to be there for kids' events, but that means I can't be there for dinner. Or I got to be, I can't sit and watch TV with you. I've got work to do. I can't go to bed the same time as you. I've got things to do. Trips. Trips are you're going to find trips are a source of consternation for you, and that your significant other, wife or husband, is going to be like, why are you so grumpy about taking a vacation? And it's because you've got to do like twice the amount of work in order to take the time off, and now you're tired, or you've got to work during your vacation a little bit, and do some of that as well, because certain things, or there's only a small window of time where you can take a vacation. As Mrs. RSP would tell you, she would say that there was a time that there was a sliver of weeks in June each year, and that was the only time we could go anywhere for a while, and or that somebody'd have a wedding in my family, and I'd be like, I know this is going to sound like I'm an asshole, and I want to go, and I'm happy for them and looking forward to it, but there's a part of me that's like, oh shit, why did they plan it in mid-February? I mean, things like that are totally selfish. It's not, and you realize
Right.
that. But those are realities of being in fantasy football, or in a football related business, and especially with fantasy football now covering a lot of the football cycle, it becomes more year round. Dynasty being a bigger thing makes it year round. Best ball leagues, all these drafting, the gambling, all of that. So there's that. And then, so I would say that's important, because you're going to lose sleep, you're going to lose time, you're going to have to make choices, and some of those choices aren't going to be easy. Is your family prepared for that? If you have young kids and do that, I'm just telling you right now, if you don't have a good way of managing that and haven't thought about it, your kids are not going to be happy with you. You need to go into that knowing, I've been fortunate that the kids that I helped raise, I got into this pretty much after they reached a certain age, and so they were more independent, and I was around earlier in ways that I needed to be. But if you got like 5-year-old, 7, 10 year, anybody less than 12 years old, and I would even argue 12 to 18 is very important, and you need to be around for that, even when they're trying not to be around you as much as they were in the past. That's important too. And so, that's one of the biggest pieces of advice. And then I'll just say, do something original. Spend time trying to do, something. If you really want to get that foothold, I would say you're going to have to start off doing whatever opportunities are there, and showing that you are a capable worker, and that you are reliable, and that you're versatile and flexible, and that you're a good teammate. And that you're going to have to start, any industry, you got to start that way. But while you're doing that, you should be finding ways to consider, how can I develop something that is my own? How do I do that? And how do I create it in a fashion where, when I do get my expanded opportunity to write more than blurbs, or to do more than video production, or to do more than, team reports at Football Guys, or whatever it is that you're starting off with, that you can do something that people go, wow, I've never seen that before, and that's good. And believe in it, and cultivate it, and spend years doing it. And sometimes you may try, you may try 3 or 4 things until you hit on what that is. You know, so I mean, I was known for something called the crank score at one point. That's how I got, and I laugh because it's like it's a shitty idea. I mean, like it's shitty execution on a good idea that's just flawed. It's just consistency scores. You know, it's not predictable. It gave a score, and that's nice, but to me, it's like the worst of the ideas that I had. You know,
Oh no, I can think of way worse ideas you've had.
I'm sure you can, but you know me well. So, but you know, you're going to have a lot of those things. You're going to have a lot of misses or certain things that you just go, and people will still go nuts for them. I still have people writing me asking me, am I ever going to go back to doing those? You know, 20 years later, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, cultivate those things. So my 2 things is cultivate something that's original and make sure that you have buy-in from the people that you want to build a life with, because they're a part of this ride too. And if they have the right mentality, they are going to be lifesavers for you. If they don't have the right mentality for it, and there's nothing wrong with them if they don't, it's what's wrong with you if you recognize that and then try and push it, because they're going to create more obstacles and you're going to be a very unhappy person, and you're going to wish you either never did this. You're probably going to wish you had never did this, unless you're just an unhealthy asshole, and then you're going to wish you never met them, which was probably not the right answer. What about you, Bob? Yeah.
All that. I mean, everyone who gets, who's considering this should realize it's a grind, because it is. Yeah. A lot of things are. So you're ready for that. Be ready for some sweat equity. So all those things Matt said, if you want practical advice going forward as you get into this business, reps. Get reps. Just like in football, the best ability is availability. If people are calling on you or asking you to jump into their pods, their videos, their radio shows, or whatever, jump on and get those turns, and that'll help define you. And the more you do, the more comfortable you get. It's just like, I do 1,000 best ball drafts over the course of the season. So when August comes, I know every value like nobody's business. It's just like it's second nature to me. And so, and yes, I'm only slightly exaggerating on the 1,000. I am exaggerating, but not by a ton. Mike Dempsey is doing 1,000 plus. So I'm not, but you get the point.
He's doing more than 1,000.
He is doing more than 1,000. Get reps, people, and hone your skills. Right, like the more you do things, the better you get at them. This is a remarkable thing that happens.
10,000 hours. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So just put in the time, put in the effort. You know what you're getting into. Matt laid it all out. And that's the big thing. Know in advance what you're getting into, prepare yourself and the people around you to deal with it, and then dive in and get those reps. And I do think the one thing that you said that's really, find a unique thing to your, that you can turn into your brand or your lane and focus on it. You're going to have to do other things, right? Until you are established or whatever.
And even when you are established,
right,
you may still have to do. There's lots of things I do that I go, I don't really want to do this, but I know I'm part of the team, and I need to do it, and I'm happy to.
For sure. So those are the things. So there you have it. Get your starting point. Figure yourself out. Figure out the people around you, and start getting reps, as many as you can. Be available to people who want you to do things, need you to do things, right? Like, I mean, people don't like to sit on their podcast all by themselves for an hour and talk by themselves. They like to have people on to bounce ideas off of. Be available and put yourself out there on X or whatever, where the people that you want to work with tend to gravitate. I know there are more platforms, there are increasing number of platforms. Go out there and get on those and find the people you want to associate with, and introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm here. Check me out. And like, you're going to get a lot of people who aren't as interested in you as you would like them to be. Don't worry about it, man. Keep going.
I think the one thing you said on our phone call that I want to highlight, that I think is probably something that is important. Some of you are going to listen to this maybe and reach out to Bob and I, okay, and ask for advice on how to get in, further advice on how to get in. And so tell them what you told me when I was doing that to ask someone.
You go ahead and phrase it for me.
Okay, I'll phrase it for you. Was basically, you shouldn't be asking us right now, because we're at a stage of that cycle where we're not breaking in. We broke in 20, 30, 35
Different
years
world.
ago. Different world back then. I mean, again, when I, and I'm not even getting to you, when I broke in, Bob Harris was writing for Sports Illustrated. Um, Bob Harris was the guy that I was hoping to like get a fraction to become in this space. And and people still thought fantasy football was something that nerds played in the basement of their mother's house, um, and it wasn't widespread. To me, once a church gets involved in something, it's mainstream. Like we were still a good 5 years away from church leagues being a regular thing when I got into this, and I was still and 5 years removed from like no internet barely being a thing.
Right. That's the thing. The evolution has been fast, and the number of people getting into this, super smart people, right? Like not like people like me and Matt, but like actual intelligent people who know what they're doing, data scientists and engineers and whatnot.
We're just survivors with a little bit of common sense.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think it's just totally applicable. But like Joe Bryant, our honcho at Football Guys, would say I'd have a hard time getting a job writing articles for my own site right now. And I mean, like if I started in this business right now, I don't know that I would be able to gain, I don't know look, it's been 30 years. So maybe if I persisted over 30 years, at some point, people would have realized, hey, this guy isn't horrible. But it wouldn't have been the same path. It would have been a much different path. So you're going to have to deal with things. So when you're asking me for advice, realize I didn't deal with some of the obstacles you're going to have to face.
Twitter.
So, happy to help.
Instagram.
Happy to help. But right, there's a lot going on. TikTok.
Yeah.
Which I still haven't. I don't know how to get there yet. So
I can help you.
Talk to Jeff Mans about that. Matt Waldman or Jeff Mans for your TikTokery. All right, let's move on. What are we doing with these All-Star games? I mean, we've got the Senior Bowl now. How should we view these things?
Yeah, the Shrine Game and Senior Bowl, there's two ways to look at this. Traditionally, the Shrine Game was always about the late round draft picks. Most of the late round UDFA guys got opportunities at the Shrine Game, or I would say maybe guys after round 4. Guys after round 4 with that type of grade were Shrine Bowl game guys. Guys before 4th round and above were more Senior Bowl guys. There, obviously, Eric Galco, who used to be part of Optimum Scouting, where my buddy Alex Brown, who's the director of SMU's recruiting, used to work for Eric. Eric got into and headed up the Shrine Game, and he's trying to compete on the same level with the Senior Bowl a little bit. We'll see if the NFL is accepting of that, but he's getting more and more prospects that may be a little bit higher than 5th, 6th round now. But still, regardless of the draft capital of the two events, you need to understand just kind of the context of these games, especially the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl is often unofficially known as the NFL's job fair. That's where scouts and coaches go. They network. They go out to the bars, Veets, and drink and talk about shop. Sometimes not talk about shop at all. But there's a lot of meetings going on. The most important meetings that happen at those All-Star games are with the players. The players are getting interviewed by teams for, they get to interview pretty much every player and have an up-close personal conversation with these guys and talk about things to get a better idea, to get to know them, use their scouting reports that they've already finished. They've finished their scouting reports by the time they get here. So when they go and watch the practices, they're there in the stands, some of these guys, and certainly they may be watching 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 players that they really haven't seen enough of, or they're small school players who they just want to see athletically match up with the names that they know. But they're not vigorously taking notes up there. Okay, oftentimes they're sitting there talking. I went to the Senior Bowl for 10 years straight. I stopped in, maybe longer than that. I stopped in after 2020 season, and I'll probably come back at some point. But with COVID, I wanted to take a few years before I left, and then this year I'm about to be a grandpa, so my wife has to fly out at any moment's notice. So I can't leave this bum over here on my right shoulder, without, on short notice. I got to be around for him. So, that is but the point being is I've seen enough of these to be able to tell you it's like the interviews are important. The on-field stuff can have a layer of importance, but it's like an onion's layer of importance, a massive
I feel, so some of you may or may not have had the distinct pleasure of being questioned by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'll not go into why I might or might not have been that, but what if that's happened to you is they don't ask you any questions they don't already know the answer to, right?
Exactly.
I feel like that's the process here, is they know everything they need to know. All they want to do, all the FBI wants to know is what kind of liar you are or aren't. I think all this is confirmation or not of the things they already know.
It's pretty much it, and there's very little that they don't know.
Right.
And they may go into it knowing what they don't know, but at this stage of knowing what you don't know, it's like this much compared to this much. So it's, so the job thing. So for the people who go and make a big importance about this, they're learning about the game. They're learning about the event. If you're going to cover practice, understand that it's best to get tape and cover the game tape practices. Of the practices, because you can't see everything at once. If you watch it on NFL.com, you'll see why. So the takes are not as reliable unless they're watching the tape, and that means they're spending all night doing it. Okay, I mean, I've done that, and I'm telling you spend all night doing it, and even then it's practice. So there are certain drills that don't mean as much as others. So these are things that you need to take into account, is that it's like training camp. There's some things that are going to be reliable, some things that are not, and it's only over a course of 3 days. The interviews can be fun, but again, how interviewing for journalism and interviewing for a job and interviewing for a sports related job in a highly competitive environment are all very different. So there's great stories. It's fun to go to. It's fun. It's a good networking opportunity also for media to be there, and it's great networking opportunity. And there's a lot of people in media who like to go to tag along with where the NFL players and coaches are and say, ooh, I got to have a drink with Bill Belichick, or I got to have a drink with Jerry Jones, or I got to do these types of things. Or you get stories, and one of my favorite stories of the Senior Bowl I'll just share really quickly is that there was an owner there who basically gave up some information that they shouldn't have in a public place, and gave people access to something that they still don't know that they gave access to, basically from their inability to understand how security should work. It's not me. So I'm just saying, I heard the story and I saw the outcome. So I'm not spreading a rumor. I literally saw it happen and saw the end result of it, and it makes me laugh, because it's like, that's kind of how loose the environment kind of is, because it's mostly job fair kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun. I have a lot of great stories with the people that I used to go with, and who I'll probably continue to go back with. And
some of them are there now.
Some of them who are there now, and the games are fun. Like the practices are fun, and that you will learn things about practice if you don't have a football background. But I would advise you to. It's going to take you a while to get perspective on what works and what matters. When I went in, I took notes on everything and worked my ass off for the first 3 to 5 years that I was there. And by the final 5 years, it was like, I'm just going to talk to my friends and hang out and have conversations about different things related to the game and not related to the game while in the stands. And then at night, I'm working my ass off to watch the tape so that I can provide content that's meaningful. So
right,
that's
it's like through the years you elevated yourself to Federal Bureau of Investigation level. You knew all the truths going in, and you're just seeing what stands out or doesn't jive with what you've already
and knowing what resources to use, and the resource isn't your eyeballs at practice.
Right.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, let's get some quick hitters on some specific players. Let's start with the Shrine Game players. Jabari Small, the Tennessee running back.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are talking about Jalen Wright, but I see a lot of good things out of Jabari Small. I mean, he's only 205 pounds, so he's not necessarily like a massive guy, but he runs hard. I think he has good vision. I think he makes good decisions. He's someone that I think might be a little bit underrated in terms of ability to make a roster.
All
And
right.
contribute.
Blake Watson from the new running back U, Memphis.
Yeah, and who came from another school. I'm trying to remember where it was. I think Old Dominion was where he was. Blake Watson to me is a very underrated back, kind of a Giovanni Bernard, Austin Eckler type of running back. I think if Giovanni Bernard came out around the time Austin Eckler did, he would have a much different career, and he had a pretty good one. Blake Watson can catch. He runs stuff between the tackles. He's a pretty good blocker. I think he's a good all-around back that if he performs well at the combine, could be an earlier pick than people realize. And a fantasy factor.
A higher profile school, Texas. Jonathan Brooks, running back there.
Guy can pass protect really well, has good size. I'm looking forward to watching a little bit more. He has the chance to be a 3-down back in the league. So he's one that I would certainly keep an eye out for, how athletically he matches up. And I would imagine that it's pretty darn good if you're at Texas.
I will just quickly suggest that in a league where they spend $250 million to $500 million on quarterback contracts and rising, pass protection is a good skill for running backs to have. Malik Washington of Virginia,
probably one of
wide receiver.
Yeah, probably one of my favorite wide receivers in the draft class, who isn't at the top of the conversation, but isn't as far down as I think a lot of people might have him. He's out of UVA, played at Northwestern. This guy he's a slot receiver with big play capability, meaning that he can
he's
play
kind of
outside.
thick, right?
Yeah, he's built like a running back. He runs like a running back. He catches the ball like a top-end wide receiver, makes good adjustments. He's not a bad route runner. This guy, I think, is going to be an underrated contributor in the league, maybe even a potential starter within his first contract, and a good one.
South Carolina. Go to the Senior Bowl. South Carolina wide receiver Xavier Leggett.
I think DK Metcalf is probably the comp a lot of people are going to give to him, and I think that there's a lot of good reasons for that. Big, physical. I think he's going to be fast enough, makes the plays. I mean, at worst, he's somewhere between Alshon Jeffrey and DK Metcalf. And to me, if he's between those two, that means he's got enough of the athletic goods to play in the league, barring anything crazy off field. I really like him, and I think that he's part of the reason why this is a pretty strong draft class. If you're not an analytics guy who does modeling and sees certain models, where I think sometimes they have some different ideas about that.
You like his quarterback?
Spencer Rattler. I like what I saw better at South Carolina than I did at Oklahoma. I actually think now that he's draftable, I think he may even be developable. But I think he's got a bit of a ways to go. He moves better in the pocket than I thought. He's great. I'll put it this way. He's great against man, and blech against zone, or it's the opposite. I don't remember right off the bat, but it's one of those that he's like all in on one. He's got half a game right now. Yes.
Going to need more than that. Malachi Corley of the Hilltoppers, a Western Kentucky wide receiver.
This kid's going to be one of those sleepers. He already is. He's great after contact. He's another running back playing wide receiver, but can adjust to the football very well in zone. He's going to have a role early in his career, even if it's not a full-fledged one. But if he can develop into a full-fledged guy, look out, because this dude runs over people, through people. He's kind of like he's a like, I would say, premium kit for DJ Moore. But if DJ Moore were like a model kit, he'd be like the mid-grade version with a chance with some upgrades available. He has a lot of DJ Moore's game in him.
Yeah, we will like that as fantasy managers. Ricky Pearsall from the Gators, wide receiver.
Yeah, everyone's talking about McConkey, the Georgia receiver. They're all talking about him as this underrated player who's got a legit NFL game, and and that he's getting overlooked a bit. No, he's not, because all y'all are talking about him now. So that's just the nature of how it goes. He's gotten exposed to the point that everybody knows who he is. Ricky Pearsall's the guy that's getting overlooked, who's the other SEC receiver at Florida. Watch him with Anthony Richardson, and you will see a player who adjusts well to the football. He might be what Alec Pierce was supposed to be with a better route game, and I think quicker than you would expect. Very good catch point skills in terms of acrobatics. I love his route running. I think he's going to show up at the Senior Bowl, and you're going to hear a lot of buzz about his route running and how good that is, because you're going to see that isolated and maybe a little magnified unfairly in these practices where they get these one-on-ones with two-way goes, and it's an inherent advantage for the wide receiver. But still, he's a good one.
Former Alabama receiver Javon Baker finished up with the University of Central Florida Knights.
Yeah, I think the people in the know, like my guy Devin Jackson, who writes for the Philly Inquirer now, and Nick Martin, who's a friend of mine who writes for this about the Steelers, who covers the draft. They've both, you can see they've both gotten on to Javon Baker and his game. Baker's got good size. He has some really excellent catch point skills. His release game is strong, which is a very important part of playing wide receiver. He's one of those guys that, if he can be a little more consistent and refine his game a bit, could belong as a good starter. Could he be a number one receiver? I don't know if he's that good, but like that 1A, 1B type of guy who can do a lot of number one stuff, but may not be quite the man you want there. But he's underrated, and there's a little bust quality to his game, but not a ton. I'm intrigued with all four of these guys from the Senior Bowl. Those are guys I would listen to about their practices.
Keep it in perspective, though, people. They
Yes.
have entire careers we're gauging them on more so than their performance in a single week.
Russell Wilson.
Unfamiliar circumstances.
Nobody gave a shit
right.
about Russell Wilson at the Senior Bowl. Nobody gave a fuck about Joik Bell at the Senior Bowl. There were lots of players like that people just were like, oh,
Right.
whatever. You
Right.
know?
It's a single data point in a long series of those. So
Yeah.
be mindful of that. Be mindful of us returning next week for another edition of Feel It or Fuck It. And for now, let's go do something else, Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to work on the rookie scouting portfolio.
There you go.
MattWaldman.com, $21.95. You can get it. You can pre-order. It'll be available April 1st. Pleasantly shocking reader since 2006. So
I have no shocks here. I am totally familiar with it, and refer to it back. Like you think, oh, well, what am I going to gain from a single year purchase? I study these things going back multiple years to see what the view of was players as they came into the league, now that they are established or failed to establish themselves, and try and figure out why, or on either end. So great information, great reference. Yep. Yeah, great reference for piece for going forward. So go out and order that up and join me in the ranks of Pleasantly Surprised every damn year. Love you, Matt. Goodbye.
love you, Bob.